Awesome. Hey, Crystal. And hey, Light Happy Lifers. This is Anne Marie here. I'm excited to be here today with Crystal Gordon from Color Me Kale, who I will be totally honest. Hello, emotional eating, you name it. And that is Crystal's stick. So, hey, Crystal.
Hello, Anne. Thank you so much for having me today. And hello, all you ladies out there, too. So happy to be here.
Awesome. So, Crystal, tell us a little bit about your story, especially regarding emotional eating and where you've been, because again, I think it'll resonate with so many women.
Yeah, I think we've all definitely been there as women, especially with so many of the pressures that are put on us about our body and food and everything else. So basically my story with my body and all the struggles that I had started at a very young age, about 6 years old or so. Um, I struggled with weight gain, acne, I mean, just a whole slew of issues, basically anything that you could go through, chronic infections. And I also have an autoimmune that I've had since I was about 6 years old. Though at the time they weren't quite kind of sure really what was going on with my body. And so this led to me having kind of unexplained weight gain and then me feeling like a lot of pain in my body. And so I just became really hateful towards my body and I felt super disconnected. And so then, of course, that hamster wheel just kept going. And so then I started turning to food for comfort all the time. And so, I mean, I remember being about 15 years old and sitting with a thing of Skippy peanut butter and chocolate and just dipping it in it and then having a bag of potato chips. And then it just kind of became this roller coaster that I was consistently on up until about the age of 24. So, and I would just eat whole pizzas by myself, hide food, and I would just go from one diet to the next, binge eating, and then not eating nothing at all, doing one of those, well, I'm going to start my diet on Monday and everything's going to be totally great. And I'm going to lose 10 pounds this week and I'm going to love myself. And of course, that didn't work.
Mhm.
I think a lot of us have been there. And so then also, of course, this created more issues with my autoimmune, which then made everything much more worse. The weight gain, weight loss, weight gain, weight loss. And it was just one of those things. It was really a big tug of war with my body. And so, yeah, at the age of 24, I really realized that I had had enough with that. And that's when my healing journey really started.
Yeah, yeah. So I think so many people can relate to this. So your healing journey is not just a diet, right? So you love a plant-based lifestyle, which is phenomenal. But tell us more about, in particular, mindful eating, and then also how plants took a role within your mindful eating.
Yeah. It was a big piece of my process. So, yeah, at about age 24, I was almost disabled. I hated my body. Just everything came crashing down like all at once. I was trying to push myself. Like I was going to school full time, going to work full time. And I was just like, I'm just going to do it all. And of course, that didn't work. I totally became burnt out. And so I went to a naturopath who introduced me to he just kind of bluntly said, like, why don't you look at fruits and vegetables and, introduce me to also gut health too. And so I was like, that sounds kind of crazy that you're telling me something so simple. And so then I got really involved and I was like, you know what? Nothing else has worked. So I'm going to try this. So I decided to give up dieting right then and there. And so I started looking at where my food was coming from. And I was like, okay, like, let's see about this whole smoothie craze and people saying they love themselves and all this stuff. And I thought it was all a bunch of woo woo. And so I just got really involved in the process of like, where does food come from and what do I really want my life to be? And so that's when I got really excited about plant-based foods and I became vegan at that point because I wanted to feel vibrant. And looking at fruits and vegetables was like a place of life-giving. They're life-giving foods and most of us just don't get enough of them. So I was like, you know what, I'm going to try it as a new way of being because it was a way of being grounded and connecting in with Mother Earth and everything that we had here instead of turning to fast food. And we've created such a disconnect, I think, in the food system as like something that should be fast and easy and it's just something we kind of have to do,
Mhm.
or we're using it as as the replacement of what else is going on in our lives.
Right.
And so I started looking at it as like, okay, well, this is for life, this is for energy. And then I also started taking a look also too at like what else was going on in my life. And really those are the two things that really helped me kind of become centered, is because like looking like, what else was I missing that I was using food as a substitute for?
Right.
And dad bringing in all this fresh fruit and vegetables, and it was just like everything changed all at once, and it was just this beautiful thing. And it was really like it was like this light bulb went off in my head. And what is so interesting too about adopting a plant-based diet, which I never thought would happen, is that I have felt a weight literally lifted off my shoulders about it was about 3 months in, and it was a spiritual kind of process for me. And I never expected that. And I've heard it from a couple other people that have, decided to go more towards a plant-based lifestyles. All of a sudden this lightness that happens, not just within your body. And I shed like 30 to 40 pounds. It's kind of fluctuated a little bit in there, but I shed 30 pounds. And I also it was like this energy, and everything came back to me. And it was amazing. Nothing short of life-changing for sure.
Yeah. And I think the emotions probably fell away too. Like, I'm a firm believer in as many fruits and vegetables as you can. Like, veggies are my thing. I love it. Like, I still eat protein, right? That's my choice, but I choose the protein wisely. And it's one of these things where it's like, the more vegetables that you have, the better off you are, right? Like,
Yeah.
some people might not be ready to go vegan, but it's something where it's like, think mindfully about your food and your choices and where it comes from. And so, right, because all of that is tied into your emotions. And when you start making these mindful choices about your food, then you have to deal with the emotions, right? So, yeah.
Yeah, it's a twofer. It's like they
Exactly.
at the same time for sure. And if you just look at your plate, yeah, like even if you're not going to become like a full-time vegan, you can still look at your plate and say, wow, this food is for life. What does that look like for me? And like, is my plate dull and like just kind of like this blah gray color? Or is
Right.
it like full of like reds and purples and greens and blues and like everything else? If you just look at it like that, it makes you also excited about your food. And it also, that emotional piece, it's like when you start kind of going, oh, like looking at food as nourishment rather than a substitute for love, substitute for something else, it just like really that mindset shifts. And that was definitely a big piece for me, is like also like, well, now that I'm actually looking at food in this way, then I can now have the room to look at my life, like the other pieces of my life in a different way. Because I'm not just going through the drive-through and doing all these fast things. It slowed me down enough to see like what was really happening in my life.
Right. Right. And so you talk a lot about creating peace with food, right? Which is
Yeah.
true. So what do you think your top 3 tips are for creating peace with food?
Oh, yeah, that's such a great question. Ooh, so peace with food. I think it's bring attention and intention. I think that's a piece of it. Bring
Ah,
intention to your plate and to your life. So I think so much it was like, okay, well, I'm just going to look at it. But what is the intention for how you want to feel? So
mm,
ask yourself, how do you want to feel at the dinner table, at lunch, no matter where you're at? Even if you're eating on the go, you can still ask yourself, how do I want to feel during the day? It's probably the biggest thing you can ask yourself is, how do you want to feel? I use a couple words for myself. It's like connected, aligned, alive, vibrant. So come up with a word that feels really great for you. And
mm,
every time like you feel a little disconnected, or you're like, I'm just going to eat a burger, or a whole cheeseburger, like 5 of them, pizzas, or whatever it is, just ask yourself, is that going to bring you closer to how you want to feel, or
yeah.
further away? So
Yeah.
it's room for like also having a cookie, because right, one cookie, that's probably going to taste great. A whole bag of cookies, not going to feel that great. So that is probably definitely my number one thing.
Cool.
Also, yeah. So 2, I would say for creating peace with food is just to slow down and chew your food. Really
Mm,
just chew your food until it is liquid. Also too, because I do deal with a lot of gut health, I think that is an important piece about
mm,
that, is you're actually going to create more energy for yourself. And so like so often we're on the go, and we're not realizing that we're not chewing our food. So even taking slower bites, you
mhm,
notice what is happening inside your body.
mhm.
You say like, oh wow, like I'm actually quite full, like I don't need to eat as much as I was eating. And so I think that that is a piece of it. Also too, for creating peace with food. So one of the big ones too, and this is on the emotional side of things, is to actually ask yourself, is there another piece missing in your life that you're turning to food for every time that you're sitting down to eat? Is there anything else that you're making up for during that process? So that's a big question.
Yeah.
It's to say, like, am I looking for nourishment
Yeah.
here in food that I maybe am missing somewhere else? And that can be, yeah, it's one of the big questions in life. And so for me, it was, there was some things that my passions that I had kind of pushed down from when I was a child. And so I just realized I wasn't living out my passion.
Yeah.
And so I think for some of us, it's maybe relationships, love, stress, our job. It can be many different things. So just placing attention on what else is going on in your life and
Cool.
placing attention on that, I think that's a big piece of it.
That's great. Now, one of the things is, I often talk about this in the Light Happy Life Lounge is you can't go from busy and stressed to Zen master overnight. So in the same way, you can't go from emotional eating an entire, bag of chips to enjoying broccoli. You prescribe a 7-day reset, right?
Yeah, yeah. That goes with the emotions and the food
Yeah.
because you have to do both together. It's like just placing on the little things because really simplicity is where it's at. Like we overcomplicate things. We really do. We're like, well, if it's not hard and it's not complicated and I'm not starving and I feel like crap and like it's all hard for me, then that has to be the way. But in reality, it's like all those little tiny things you do to bring attention to your day, to bring attention to your dinner plate. That's where it's at. And then it's easy peasy from there. And then all of a sudden, like, and I see this so many times with my clients, they're like, so I finally weighed myself after about a month and somehow I dropped like 10 pounds. And I'm trying to figure out, they're like, I can't quite believe it. So like, I'm still like sitting with this. And it's one of those things, it's like everything kind of comes together when you let go of it, which it seems like a catch-22, but it's like the minute you start really focusing on the little stuff is where it's at. So that's what I go through on the 7-day reset. Little tiny things that you just bite away at,
Yeah. And once you start peeling off the layers, you start feeling better. It's like feeling like crap is not normal, right? Like,
Yeah, it's not normal.
that's right. Like everybody expects it. It's like, no, that's not the way you're supposed to be. You're supposed to be vibrant. You're supposed to be colorful, right? All of that is the way that you're supposed to eat and live your life.
Yes, empowered and beautiful. Like we as women are gorgeous and powerful and strong warriors, and we're we caretake for so many other people, but
Yeah.
like we should not feel like we're just dragging through the day. Like
Right.
vibrancy, alive, laughter, like all those things, that is our center. That's really how we like show up in the world, like going back to that childlike state.
Yeah.
That is
Cool.
the
So on that note, here's the last question. What's your secret to a light, happy life?
Yes. Okay. I love that question. So, light, happy life. When really going back to that intention, light, happy life is become aligned with how you want to feel in everything you do throughout the day. And I know we already talked about that in the 3 tips. And I think that is part of that process of becoming aligned in every single area. Be colorful. Like, do not be afraid to be colorful on the plate and in your life. So think about the words of how you want to feel. Think about that feeling, get into it and really dream it up. Close your eyes like during the day and be like, oh yeah, that feels good. And notice where the connection is that's off.
Yeah.
Like if it's off at like, oh gosh, every time I talk to that person, like I feel super drained and I feel awful. Like notice that, write it down.
Yeah.
And you have to act on it right away, but just becoming in that alignment with it and just going, okay, like I'm noticing a real trend